Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today is the July 21st. So we have a full agenda. And especially I see the old friend, Michael Crosby, and propose a topic. And the topic is being discussed long time back. We discussed, but we paused and never come back. So Michael, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, nice to see you here. Yeah.
Thanks.
So do you want to start the topic? Yeah.
Yeah. Can you enable screen sharing for me, please?
Definitely. Just 1 second. Go ahead.
All right, cool. All right, are you able to see my slides now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to propose this node resource interface as an extensible way to manage resources for containers. And I have this quick little slide deck. We'll kind of go through the problem that we currently have, and that's resource management. C groups topology is hard. We have a lot of different workload requirements, batch, latency sensitive, and then if you're giving cube to customers, you have SLAs, SLOs, and then different priorities of workloads that they're going to be running. And then like we have many different things that are classified as resources. So CPUs, NUMA, L3 cache, huge pages, and then going down even farther, you want to have your workload scheduled close to a GPU or network card and so on. So this creates a large matrix, and we have a couple current solutions. So I did a lot of research. Kubelet today has CPU manager and topology manager. And there's a few KEPs proposing improvements to CPU manager, like adding NUMA support and so on. But a couple things that I noticed, it's a really weird UX for enabling CPU manager. You have to have a flag set. If you request, you can limits and you're guaranteed, and their whole cores, then the universe aligns and you get your very own CPUs on your node. And so looking at that, and then other projects in the community like Intel CPU Manager, there's a CMK tool that does a really good job at topology, and it creates this model of you have different pools of resources and you can pin your pods and workloads to those. But then how they integrate that into kind of the Cube ecosystem is the CRI resource manager, which implements the entire surface area of the CRI just to inject resource and scheduling information for pods.
Michael, small correction here. This is two separate projects, so it's like CMK is a historical one and CRI is a resource manager is a bit different one.
Does the resource manager still use CMK under the hood?
No.
Oh,
No.
not anymore. Okay.
Well, it has a compatibility mode, so we have a policy which can emulate and migrate with CMK workloads, but the implementation is completely different.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll update the slides then after this. But yeah, like I guess the main thing is that having to implement the entire CRI API surface area is very large for just managing resources. So in general, QoS is hard. Everyone has different requirements. So let's focus on APIs and not implementations, which is my main focus of this presentation. Is having things like CPU manager and topology manager and the kubelet makes it hard for people to build different resource types and extend that. So one thing we have in the container space is CNI, and I think CNI is a very simple, elegant, extensible interface, and it works well across all these different network backends. I don't know of any controversy that we've had in the past with CNI. It's you have plugins, you add them, and it just kind of works. And I think it's it's something that we need to look into, where let's make CNI for resources. And so I'm proposing this thing called NRI because CRI was taken. I wanted it to be container resource interface, but I'll settle for node resource interface. And kind of, I believe the kubelet is not the right abstraction to have things like CPU manager in the core. It's something that we could take out into an extensible API, where in the kubelet or at the CRI level, we can have hooks just like CNI is implemented into the lifecycle of our containers or pods, and then be able to implement plugins, either vendor specific, deployment specific, or general plugins that come from the Kube community, like ripping out CPU manager into a separate binary. So I've kind of modeled this heavily after CNI. So you have kind of a global system config where you can have multiple plugins and order matters. You can chain them together, where you can have different things for, like, this one manages NUMA, this one manages CFS quotas, and so on. And then I built kind of skeleton code. So just like in CNI, you can easily create these plugins effortlessly to do this. So it's kind of helping people with all the boilerplate. And then at the CRI level, or after getting more feedback, whether we put this at the kube level, you have packages like client packages, just like CNI does, for, okay, invoke this at between the start and create of the container, because we already have C groups or the file system and stuff built up. And then we have different like lifecycle events, create, delete, update, where we can hook into if we do it at the lower levels. So as I was working through this, trying to make sure my ideas weren't totally crazy, I built this confine plugin. And what it does is it handles dynamic topology and QoS management. So it supports both latency sensitive, where you launch a pod and you can use annotations to say, this is batch, this is latency sensitive. And then it'll schedule on the pod. If it's latency sensitive, it gets entire core guarantees, and then that other plugin of clear CFS to remove the CFS quotas on that, so it has full access to the cores. Or if batch workloads come on, they can be scheduled across multiple cores, which are shared. And then you can see in this little demo, you have cores 1 and 2, because those were system reserved for kubelet and other system things. So this plugin, I just worked on it to build a dynamic node topology, dynamically place workloads based on their QoS class, with NUMA support as well. So I think NRI overall, we have a lot of pluses. We don't have to wait for kube release cycles to get updates to different resource types, or if you have very vendor specific hardware that you need to integrate with, you can just build a small binary that handles that resource type. And if things don't work, you can fork those plugins, like in the Intel CRI manager interface. You don't have this huge CRI interface to implement. You can implement a very small specific binary, just like a CNI plugin for Mac VLAN or bridging. So kind of next steps, I have a formal proposal of the spec up on Containerd. I have these demo plugins that I've been working on. And within Containerd, I have support for this both in CTR, where you can just launch containers and specify different QoS classes or how you want the NUMA and topology kind of handled. And it's also, I also have it integrated in CRI, where I've been testing this out on a kube cluster. So that's all I have now, and looking for like feedback from this community on like whether this makes sense, or if I'm totally not aligned with the work that's been going on so far. So that's all I have.
I think someone have the comment.
Yeah, Michael, How do you think this will play, or whether this will address the device plugins? Do you think this can be extended to incorporate device plugins as well? So maybe we can uh, provision specific hardware like virtual functions using this API?
Yeah, so when I first came up with this proposal, it's kind of like at the CNI level where it's very low level where you can hook into container life cycles. And I didn't want to overstep the bounds too far and say, oh yeah, you can totally do away with device plugins as well and just use a generic interface for modifying, because there's maybe device plugins are too specific where we can have something more generic and manage resources as CPUs, devices, GPUs, things like that. So it would work. Like, I don't see anything in the API design that would prevent that.
Thanks, Michael.
Michael, in the past, so all your problem listed there is real problem. So we try to, in the past, there's the several attempts we try to consolidate those things, and one of attempt it is extended resource and try to propose like the resource class concept. And resource class, actually, it is combine all those kind of the topology, CPU, memory, all those kind of things. So didn't go further. I understand you mentioned that all those good quality about the SIG, but the SIG also recently, like the couple network team folks also mentioned to me the SIG problem. SIG problem, it is because exactly the problem for them using that API in production. It is because it is too extensible and it's too abstract and didn't describe what exactly responsibility about like the plugin to do. So a lot of time, folks stick with the one plugin and stick with forever. And but so that's kind of end up to like to switch from the one SIG plugin implementation and to another SIG implementation. I totally agree with all your API abstract things, but the problem it is for them describe that's also the problem. We saw that initially we try to avoid, because initially when we start the CRI, we also want to be the generic, but the reason we didn't at the end make that is mixed is just because we have to support Docker, because Docker is the only one qualified for the production use, right? You don't have the problem. People want to take that CRI to influence Docker change, but still have another problem. Still, that's the only production use back then. So we take a different approach. But during that time, we also realized initially more abstract, more extensible way, and might not describe what we exactly want. Like even today, people want more concrete define about the CRI even. And instead, so that's the kind of same thing like the CNI take a different approach, because when we first started talk to the CNI, today actually basically it is CNI didn't define how to interact with the Kubernetes, how to act well with the CRI. So there's another effort from the network community. They want to redefine the CRI. So I want to share with you those things. But all the problem you described and there, and also the focus on the API, and all is the good direction. And I'm really looking forward to continue this discussing, because the pain is true. The problem is true. The challenge is the real there. We've been attempted a couple of times, and the back to the typology management, CPU memory. So far, I like but I have the personal play with. I like the Intel's latest CRI plugin type of the management things, but I also see the potential problems. So looking forward to continue those discussing at the resource management working group and figure out what's problem, how we are going to make that evolve. Just share with you. Like as a vendor also, like right now I'm not aware the open source had, while Google had. I feel so comfortable to tell my production to switch to Containerd and or maybe switch to the Cryo. I don't need to worry about it because the CRI quite in detail, even like because it is still have the implementation may have the bug, but I feel comfortable from high level to switch because the effort should be like the constraint risk is the content risk. Just share this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If I may comment, Don, if you have actually some comments about CRI-RM, please share. I would be really happy to hear them. But back to Michael's presentation. So, Michael, a few comments why we actually gone to a CRI model. So for us, the main problem what we were trying to solve was about dynamic reconfiguration of all workloads. So like migration between the nodes and migration between the CPUs and automatically readjusting the things which, like for example, like if you have unused capacity of a machine, you can use like for various workloads, and when suddenly you get a workload which require a particular device. At this moment, you better to put this device needed workload close to the device, but the rest of the workloads needs to be migrated dynamically. So like CNI kind of plugin, in a sense, it's hooked to the life cycle of one particular container. The CRI allows us to get the whole information about the system, about like the whole set of sandboxes, the whole set of containers within those sandboxes. So at the moment when we started to look at those, it was no single mechanism of plugins between CRI and, Cryo and Containerd. So for us, instead of trying to hack two separate projects, we just got to a simple model, like, okay, let's sit in between them. And if somebody wants to actually implement the plugin, we don't require to fork the whole project. We have the idea of policies or kind of like plugins inside of it. So practically you get programmatic API inside, which allows you to get the whole information about like running system. Like everything what we know from CRI messages, it's available for your policy to make a decision, plus all what we know from the hardware. So that's the reason why we gone to a CRI level. And I don't know. I would like to improve it. I believe what we need to move all these hardware related things below a kubelet, because it looks like, well, I think the kubelet it should be like really generic implementation. It shouldn't be polluted with the hardware dependencies or hardware related things. But how to implement that, it's open question. And specifically, well, now we have like in the community two like most active projects, Cryo and Containerd. Maybe we can come up with some kind of mechanism where this kind of hardware information we can collaborate. But the whole thing, it shouldn't be like single container. It should be like the whole system, in our opinion.
Yeah, I actually ran into that exact issue myself because I started out where this would model after CNI, where you get an invocation of just a single container, but when you're thinking about a pod, you kind of need to know, or even going down the route of VM-based containers, you kind of need to know the entire resource request for that pod as a whole at the time you modify things. So it's something that we have to have. It's kind of a two-step. We need a good API for developing plugins, and we also need support at the CRI layer from Containerd or Cryo to be able to push the whole kind of pod spec as a payload to those plugins instead of just doing it as a one per container, and then it tries to aggregate those. So yeah, it's something I'm aware of as well, and I've been working through this.
So actually, I think Alexandra and Michael, both you align, at least the one thing's align. It is, we all think about the Kubernetes, it is try to provide a generic solution, try to not have those hardware in detail, all those kind of things pollute of the Kubernetes. Different vendor, different provider have the different requirement based on the domain, right? Based on the problem the services they try to provide it. But on other hand, so I think that the approach from me, both we also, the problem it is the resources at the node level. We need to understand the node level of the global knowledge. It's not just like a pod and a container. But there's the fundamental difference if we attack at the CLI level. And so there's so attack that from the CLI, it is literally through the CLI to integrate with the pod and the container lifecycle, because you still need to integrate with the Kubernetes and the pod and the container lifecycle to then you can manage those resources. So then you can apply to Kubernetes policy or maybe your own resource policy. Then you can literally integrate with the control plane scheduler of the Kubernetes hub. And Michael, what you attack, which is what we try to attack in the past, we have to get into the detail. We can iterate this. We try to, in the past, we try to say, okay, here it is the one scheduling. The scheduling should be hierarchical. So they have the cluster scheduler, even could be global scheduler, multiple cluster. That's what we are talking about a long time ago. Then at node, I also have a scheduler, right? So node Kubernetes is the one scheduler, and then go to down lower level. The kernel is another process level of the scheduler. So that's at least the picture in my mind. So then the resource, how to coordinate that resource, should we separate? So that's why a while back we talked about the resource management, but then what it is the Kubernetes and Kubernetes, or not just Kubernetes, basically just Kubernetes, how to interact with this separate resource management. That time, I hope we can through the C group namespace directly, because it should reflect those kind of things at the very low level. But that didn't go very well because that time I guess it's still adoption phase. Kubernetes itself is adoption phase. And another thing is C group also evolved. That time, like C group version 2 still in the debate and many coming things. So people ask a question, how we are reliable to make sure we can export all the resource, because even like the device plugin that I think who asked that question, I forgot. Even device plugin, there's not really can be widely represented by the C group. Right? So then you have to do a lot of things, especially like the C group version 2 that time. I haven't followed recently development. That time, even like 2 years ago, they don't support the device C group yet. And so there's the many unknown to us. So we are past that effort. We didn't move forward. Instead, and then we try to be even more abstract. The even more abstract, that's what I mentioned that I can share with you offline about some discussing called the resource class. And like the high level, like the represent those kind of answer your question earlier. You mentioned UX issue and usability issue. And that one, because abstract at that level, even make the things even more complicated. Because you had so many detail and each different cases, then you end up you have to guess what the customer asked for. What can exactly admin want to expose? And so there's the different level of the interface. one level of the interface is like user facing, is really simple. Another level of the interface, and it is implementation detail or maybe admin detail. So that's kind of make that things even more complicated. So that's why we also, I just share with you some like the legacy and some background, but this is kind of like the biting us because do hurt Kubernetes like long term how we are move forward. Just share with you, and I share with you a lot of in the past.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think like what you said, especially at a UX level, batch and like latency sensitive means different things to different people. Like is Cube running in an HPC workspace? Maybe when they say they want a NUMA node, they want the entire NUMA node just to themselves, or like different things like that. So yeah, that part, the UX on the user side, and then how that gets broken down into how we express that on the node side is can vary a lot. But I also look at it as kind of a two-step scheduling problem. You schedule on the node, and then the node schedules on its resources. And like one thing that I was needing is like, what is the right place to put an interface like this? Is it CRI, or is it in the kubelet where we need more of the entire view of it? Or if it was in CRI, one of the problems is error propagation back. Like, what if we have to reject this workload because of something? I don't think today there's a way for the CRI to say like, no, I'm not even going to try this. Like, it would just like, it would be a runtime error and not like a scheduling decision if it was at that level. So that creates some complexities.
Like actually, there's the recent discussing at the resource management work group. Basically, that's what the problem at the scheduling. Kubernetes want to reject it. That's kind of we move forward. We try to move forward. Even like the vertical auto scaling for the pod auto scaling, we endorse, we input, we implement some like the rejection. So but there's the balance, right? So you cannot like the schedule make the decision because the scheduling don't aware about the resource usage at all on the node. This is kind of like the I keep mentioning that our scheduler is not a usage aware scheduler, which they are making like the based on the request, make all those kind of decision, placement decision, which is not intelligent enough because the user could be lie. And or maybe user just don't know and made wrong discussing. So how we are going to adjust that kind of situation, how build that feedback loop, punish those abusive user, all those kind of things missing. So then we add more functionality. More we add more functionality, and the system overall is harder to manage. So I'm looking forward, we can continue that discussing, and we, especially on the resource management as a whole, because it's not just node, should include of the scheduler and the control plan have the big influence on all those kind of things. Next stage.
Yeah, sounds good.
If I may add a few comments. So from my perspective right now, the problem what we have is we are stuck in the middle of a pathway. So like in legacy kubelet, we had the kubelet to detect everything and control everything in the C groups because the interface through the Docker socket was kind of limited. And when we implemented the CRI, which solved most of the problems, but there are still, like we have like two cooks in one kitchen. Like one is kubelet, one is container runtime. And both of them trying to modify something in the kernel. One step to solve that problem actually was done by the virtual kubelet guys, where we have the actual implementation reports to this virtual kubelet saying like, I have this amount of resources, and that reports to the control plane. And when the virtual kubelet, when it actually executes the workload, it says, okay, this is the pod, this is container, this is amount of resources, what it wants to use. And it just passes it down to actual plugin, which does the container execution. So this idea is a lot more transparent and more generic compared to what we have like this mixed mode where the container runtime and kubelet trying to do something with the kernel.
Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, I've noticed the lines between CRI and kubelet are kind of blurry, but yeah.
Yes. Okay. So Michael, please attend our meeting about the resource management group. I will let you know when. And currently it's cancelled, but we are going to come back and discuss that more. So and also welcome to the SIG Node, and we can continue this talk.
Thank you.
So
yeah,
we have
sounds good.
Yeah. So could you put your slides to the SIG Node agenda, and so that people can reference?
Yeah, I will.
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you here. And let's move to next topic. I think the happy is the topic about the delete core VI collection. I believe is the pod collection. And can you?
I can speak to that topic. Hippie put it in. It is from the II team. We're busy dealing with conformance testing, and we've been running this in the test grid for quite a while. If you open the issue or the pull request, you will see the test grid is mentioned at the top. And if you follow the test grid, there's actually some flakes every now and then. And then Stephen Haystack, that's actually written the test, he evaluated. And if you look at the bottom of the comment, the last comment in there, you'll see that it builds quite well. And we have very good performance, but there is some timeouts. It takes only 12 seconds and 16 seconds to perform what it should be doing for the delete of the pods. But at one stage, it actually timed out before the minute is over, and we're not sure what this fix. And we don't think it's the test. We think there might be something else. You can help us figure out what's going on. I don't know if there's somebody that wants to comment to that.
I guess we just saw this one today, so we haven't looked at that in detail yet. No, and so we definitely want to look into this one and on this one. So yeah.
I don't think time-wise it's something we're going to solve in this. But Dawn, if you can tell me, will you look at it? Who else? And then we can catch up on Slack. Would that be okay?
Can someone volunteer to take this one? We have like the E2E test working group, and there's a proposal for Node CI project subject. Can someone just say, okay, to take this?
I can take it. I can help. I'm one of the contributors that's been working with the test cleanup group.
Thanks, George. What I'll do, I'll drop you a message in Slack, and then we can discuss. I'll copy Stephen in as well. He's the guy that actually wrote the test, and we'll appreciate it because we're sort of running short of time for 119. It's got to be in the next few days, otherwise we're going to miss the cutoff. I'll appreciate it.
Sounds good.
I think that's all from my side.
So right, thank you for this one, and maybe you can carry on this one. There's the Georgie, is there like the Slack channel for the SIG Node E2E test? They already have the Slack channel. Can we using that one? So that not just.
Sorry, I was gonna say that there isn't a lot for everything CI related, at least within SIG Node. We've been using the same SIG Node Slack channel, so there isn't anything particular for the group.
Yeah. So can you add the people to there, and then can carry the discussing. One thing is I want to we really make sure. So the Kubernetes is an open source project, and for the open source project to make that sustainable, we really try to make that it is inclusive or transparent. Otherwise, that's a big lesson I learned too, right? So like the company may be, folks may be join or maybe left, and also company may be put effort or maybe like the withdraw effort. But to make open source project sustainable, we need to every time we try our best to make that transparent. The Michael Crosby and the leading effort on the Containerd and the Docker community. I think he's really working advocate on the open source community. In the past, he can share more, but at least I personally feel to make the open source project to succeed and sustainable, transparent and inclusive is pretty important here. I personally learn lessons too here.
Yeah, absolutely. So to that end, besides helping out with this, I guess what you just said sounds like sounds more or less like we are on the same page. The thing that I was planning on is to actually take this, and I'll ping as many people as I'll ping everyone on Slack to make it as to keep the conversation going, and I'll make sure that everything is organized in GitHub as well, in case people want to follow along or just catch up later.
Sure.
Thank you. We really appreciate the help, George.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Hey George, just one more ask on. Hey George, just one more ask on the conformance test and adding and those things. So there are quite several people interested in doing that. It would be great if you can document the steps and have some instructions for the community to follow later on if we see if they have similar requests in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
Well,
Thank you.
Definitely will do.
Okay, let's move to the next topic. Reno, are you still missing something? I think anything to move forward about your feature 1.19 feature. I think we discussed this and we agree. Okay, so let's move to the next topic. I think that we already addressed. I even the morning I approved his PR. So next move to next one. Like the George, do you want to continue about your CI sub project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna start with a little bit of context, just in case people were not. A lot of conversations have been split up in multiple places, but essentially, possibly a couple months ago, there was an initiative which started with a message on the SIG Node mailing list to begin cleaning up some of the end-to-end tests that the SIG Node has on test grid. And if you click on the link that I added on the notes, the very first message takes you to that initial thread, and I see that Victor is in here. And please correct me if I'm saying something wrong, but my understanding is that that initiative was time box. I guess something like let's get some people, let's get some initial documentation, let's try and fix a lot of the test, and a lot of really amazing work came out of it. We have better documentation for the images that we use, better documentation for how the node end-to-end test actually work. A lot of dashboards went from complete red to green or flaky every now and then, which is a huge improvement. And since then, I've been hearing from a lot of people that they are interested in learning more, becoming more active members of SIG Node. And I wanted to propose to actually make that, I call it CIC project. I'm not the name is the name in this case is just a name, but the CI subproject, CI signal, node end-to-end test, whatever the best name is for it. I wanted to propose to actually make it an official subproject of SIG Node, and essentially just keep the momentum going, have regular meetings, and prioritize issues such as the one that such as the conformance test one, and everything related to CI for SIG Node. So with that, I wanted to see what people thought about this.
Yeah, I just wanted to just add a couple of things. So Jorge, yeah, this is what you're saying is absolutely true. You know, we had this thing all started out with a fire drill for some of the SIG Node end-to-end tests were sort of release blocking, and a few of us jumped on to debug, which we had to do again last week for a different issue. And it has been great. You know, there's a lot of folks volunteered, a lot of things have been fixed, but there's still work to be done, as you say. And so I'm not quite sure how sub-projects work in Kubernetes. You know, this meeting and also the SIG Node resource management meeting sort of came to a pause. There was I had to take a break off of work for a couple of weeks, and you know, I came back and it was still a little bit slow getting back into the full speed of things. And one of the things I hadn't done was, you know, sort of start that back up. But I think, you know, from the testing perspective, it would be good, absolutely good to continue this. And, you know, there's a great start. And is the sub project the right thing to do? I'm not sure. Maybe Dawn has more input on that, or somebody that's been in Kubernetes and knows, say, sub projects and that. I don't know how quite that works. We were sort of doing this informally under SIG Node because it, you know, was just touching really SIG Node stuff. And so I think that was the plan. So continuing it is good. The right way to continue it and how to move forward, I'm not sure. I would support something like this if that's the Kubernetes sub-project SIG Node thing way to do, which I don't know that part. I know there are a lot of folks interested. There's still a handful of people that actively jump on issues when they happen, just like we did last week, or yeah, it was last week. So, and I think some of the other folks that want to contribute could certainly jump in and help and learn from that too. So I think it's good. So that's sort of my thinking on it at this point.
I have a quick note. I think it was a great effort, Victor. Thank you so much for kicking that off, by the way. I think when we make this more official, I would like there to be some described goals and explicit problems we want to solve, just so we're not flailing as much. And when we have volunteers, we're all committed to the same goals. To that end, I've been thinking about just writing down like high-level problems we want to solve with this. I haven't gotten around to finishing that up yet, but Ning and I were going to take a stab at it sometime next week. So if it's okay, like we can send that around and crowdsource what other community members want to get out of a subgroup like that, just so we're all on the same page and working towards the same goal. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. You know, this was something that we had just started off, and yeah, making it a little more formal and, you know, soliciting more input, I think would be great. Yeah.
Sorry. The other thing that I wanted to add is just to keep to make the group a little bit more present. What would you all think about at least while we what Karan mentioned? Sorry if I mispronounced your name, but I guess it sounds like a charter for the sub project. So while we work on that, besides that, also get some weekly or bi-weekly meetings just to check in on things. There is also a project board on the Kubernetes organization that Victor created, which we can standardize around. Just make sure that issues and PRs get added on that, and periodically just groom and make sure that things are actually moving along. I guess so. And this is the main motivation for proposing a superior, is like really standardize on something that we can all agree on. That's going to be kind of the in-between codes process, so that so that we can all collaborate and make sure that we have complete visibility on what is going on, and keep pushing for things when we don't see any changes in long intervals of times, and at least those kind of things.
Yeah, I would certainly second that project board. You know, when we were going through that, my email box was flooded with review requests, and I was like, which PR do I need to look at? Which one is where? And so I, created that project board, and I was like, aha, this is it. So now we had all the stuff up there, and you can see what to be done, waiting for reviews, waiting for approval, and that was one of the greatest tools. So I would strongly encourage that, even though we didn't spend a ton of time on that, because that was sort of toward the end before I took a little time off. But I really enjoyed that project board, and I think it'd be a great tool to help, sort of manage, keep up with what needs to be done and where it's at. Yeah.
So can I finish my thoughts thing first? So,
Hello?
Okay. Can you hear me right now?
You're still here.
Yes, I can.
Thank you. All of a sudden, everything's froze. So I just want to say that I'm totally pro like any effort to improve of the overall testability, and the reliability. That's the challenge for us. But since I've been in this SIG group since day 0, and I see the people come and gone, and for any sub project to make that success, we need to start. So in the past, we always succeed with something project. It is have the clear of the define what's the responsibility, what's the deliverable, and also come up a plan executable. And so far I haven't seen that yet. Obviously, like to make this test, the high level goal, it is the SIG Node test, improve of the SIG Node test coverage, and make SIG Node test reliable, and flaky of the SIG Node test. And obviously that's the good call. And in the past, in the SIG Node, we try to align all the SIG Node tests. Like we put the engineer to clearly on we create off the SIG Node, right? So SIG Node started the first version of the conform test. Then we delete a lot of our SIG Node tests to the conform test, become to like the Kubernetes conform test. But then later, even conform test, it is like the getting weaker. And until community put people, dedicated people to own that responsibility. And the SIG Node, it is falling apart. Test falling apart is just because some vendor and have some internal reorg, and new people didn't pick up. So I try to avoid people using this is become to like they have to own something or pick up some work. But on the other hand, we have to, because of the build ownership. The problem is it is how we build that ownership, make that ownership a little bit sustainable. Like even like the people come and gone, but still the ownership is here, and still have a group of people can take over. How we are going to do that? So I think if we can do that, that's really important charter for this sub project. Otherwise, it's just like the temporary to fix some bug, temporary fix some test. We've been doing that many times. We even have like the SIG Node fix yet. We call the fix yet, and engineer like the really looking forward everybody, and try to spend like we pass the work even, and for 1 week just do the test fix for the community. So but still the test could be go rotten again because new stuff. How we are going to enforce those kind of things? We need to come up with a plan, like the more executable and sustainable plan, and how to measure deliverable also is important in that plan. I just share the past experience I have because we've been doing this a couple times. And in the past 6 years, I think many people like Mike Brown and stay here, and David Dashpool and been here for long to assess. We've been through this path and come and gone. So how we are going to, so.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I was coming from, is defining some goals. I think tests will always be flaky, but if we have tools to debug them, maybe if we have ways for sharding work and managing work and getting alerted, that should give us quite a bit of headroom for fixing underlying problems. But yeah, Ning just posted that in chat. Yeah, we can do like a small brainstorm session sometime in the next couple of weeks and just agree to the baseline problems we want to solve. And then as a follow-up, we can come up with ideas for solving them and shard the work.
Also want to add a thing to the comment that Dan just made is people come and go, and I guess one of the efforts is to make sure that people come and go and they are completely free to do so. And you know, if they want to take time away, please do so. But we have to reduce the loss of knowledge to that.
Yes.
Another thing that I was thinking is that we might also need some people to volunteer to be, I guess, sub-project owners or something of the sort to actually, I guess, manage the team and make sure that we have some ladder for people that are interested to gain the knowledge that they need to actually do things. But we also have someone looking over who's covering what and make sure that we can get more people, ask for more help, or shuffle things around. And in that case, I'm just mirroring what I've seen in other SIG projects. And I guess that will also be kind of up to the SIG leads, in this case Dan and Derek, and I guess to anyone who wants to volunteer and thinks that might be a good idea.
Yeah, always good idea. Michael, do you want to comment something? I saw your name here.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just, I think this is an exciting area. We've got a lot of test buckets that are sitting in CryTest, SIG Node, and conformance, and we probably need to align them better. They need to be more stable. Get rid of the flakes. It's really it's a node conformance that we're trying to work on, right? And yeah, certainly all the runtimes that are CRI enabled are using the CryTest, and we try to get our prowls in on making sure that it works there as well. Against SIG Node. But yeah, I think we've got a lot of overlap of the test cases. We probably need to refactor a lot, come up with a different way to write the test cases and share them and make sure that they're, not testing the same thing 5 different ways, not wasting time and effort. Right now, we've got a lot of CRI and Node APIs that aren't really even being tested, rules that aren't, enforced. So I think there's a lot of holes. I think we need to work together as a work group and focus on, cleaning it up so that we can hand it off to, people in the future when they want to add a new test case. How do they do it? Where do they do it? How does that test propagate up through, the conformance, as opposed to just cutting and pasting them and you get something that's flaky and you don't have a way to fix it, right? Because you have to fix it in too many places or you don't know why it's flaky, right? Mm-hmm. We need ownership.
Yeah, I'm looking forward for the proposal and the next week, and then we can discuss at the community and here, and then we can talk about how to move forward with whatever format. Could be sub-project, could be a working group, or could be anything. But we can discuss, and once we see those executable plan and the proposal in written format, and share with the community to review. I want to leave like the 2 minutes for SAS. That's the real E2E test failure. And another one, Seth, do you want to talk about your problem? This is the last topic we have in today's agenda.
Yeah, I was just wanting to bring up that as part of another work to basically we noticed that static pods, their termination grace period was not being honored. Like if you move them out, move the manifest out of the directory, they were killed immediately. So we made some changes, and along with that, introduced an EDE test, which we haven't ever validated termination grace period seconds was honored. We had a test to make sure that the containers terminated inside that limit, but not that they were given that limit. And so like that, if you created a pod that it got its signal and then would terminate after 20 seconds, there was no test to make sure that it got those 20 seconds if it had it specified in the pod spec. So this is the first EDD test to do that, and exposed a race in the kubelet where especially in the EDE environment where there's lots of pod creation and deletion going on every node, we can get stale data from the runtime cache, and the delete pods path thinks that that there's a pod with no containers running, when actually the container has started and the pod has reported ready to the API server, but it just kills the pod it calls directly into the runtime to kill the pod, which ends up killing the container ungracefully. So I've been working with Jordan, who uncovered we have like a 5% flake rate when we fall in that window. So I've been working with Jordan on an approach here, and David has chimed in on the PR now, and I think we're close to a solution. So I posted kind of the breadcrumbs in the agenda there for anyone who wants to follow along. But we want to get that fixed soon because it's causing lots of problems in the Node EDE.
Thank you, Seth, for update this one. Yeah, and also we ran out of time. I really want to hear your opinion about the Node E2E sub project, but we ran out of time. But anyway, we haven't seen proposal. Once we have proposal, I want to, because you are one of the tech lead in this SIG group, and I want to hear your opinion on those things. Yeah.
Dawn, we skipped one topic about topology over scheduling.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, we have a short status update. We prepared a cap for pod resources, and David already took a look at it. It looks good for him, but we want another people to look at this cap. We also prepared implementation for it. And right now we are waiting the feedback from Node feature discovery community to continue. I think that's all.
Just kind of a bit of background information on this. So we've been exploring container runtime interface as a part of gathering resources which have been allocated currently. And there are shortcomings with different runtimes. So Containerd allows us to expose the resources allocated, whereas now that I was experimenting with Cryo, it does not. I know I'm familiar with vertical pod auto-scaling work, which is in progress, that might to some extent solve a problem, but this is kind of a PR that we're proposing to use pod resource API as a way of gathering the allocated resource information.
Sure. So I'm so sorry for miss that one.
Yeah.
I just want to say like right now we ran out of time, and people feel free to stay here to continue discussing. But this one is continue will record, and I will be here to finish this conversation. But other people, if they have the other, they can feel free to drop. Yeah. Please go ahead. Sorry.
Don, I think it's a good topic to be discussed on resource management forum once it's scheduled. Yeah. Because we definitely need time to discuss it properly.
Definitely. Like the Michael today proposed another proposal, right? So I also think about that we need to spend the time. And of course, after Michael go over his thoughts and put those together, and we can discuss more. So we discussed that at last week's the SIG Node meeting. We are going to at least continue some of the resource management work group for some time, right? So that's basically Derek and I agree upon. But I believe Derek is on vacation. I think he's on vacation this week. So we will come back and next week and see maybe next week schedule another 5 weeks continue of the discussing. Is that okay? And we'll discuss with Michael, this with the Derek. The problem is the previous proposal is at 6 for the East Coast. It's just impossible. A lot of the people cannot attend. So that's another problem. So I will discuss with the Derek and also the other people like Harsha, and then we can come up with some other solution. And so 6 o'clock should be okay if the most people in the East Coast and Europe. So then we'll be okay. But I just want make sure how many people will based on that one and find the best time, so we can continue those things. And I will try to figure out maybe we can start resume that discussing next week. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yes.
In the meantime, if people have some time just to review the CAP, that will be great.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye.